Well, to continue our discussion about gods and the human beings, well, we see that we come to realize that most of these gods are not directly connected with the human beings. They do not respond to our prayers, to our implorings, nothing. And yet we see in humanity, in society, in the West, here, anywhere and everywhere, in every country, people going to the temples and praying and offering and whatever. So who are these gods? Or is there a difference between gods and gods? And that's what we should try to understand. Because this question of the gods is becoming very popular in India and even in Thailand and everywhere. They're building more and more monasteries for the Buddha. So it's kind of necessary to get a clarification. And here again is the mother who brings us a wonderful clarification to tell us that these higher gods or the gods of the overmind in fact they do not like to be worshipped. One thing is, we have said they are aloof and indifferent and all that. It's partly because they don't want to be worshipped. And that's a very new kind of looking at gods or understanding. We don't understand, but the mother understands. He said they don't want to be worshipped. And maybe because of that, they don't want to, they really are away from the human being, they're aloof, they're indifferent, they go in their pomp and pride and royalty and they want to remain away from the human beings. Because Mother herself says they do not like to be worshipped. No, it does not give them any special pleasure at all. Don't think they are happy. So you see, such a new light thrown in. The God, you see, we do everything to please gods. Thinking that if I do this puja or this yajna or this thing and offer something, they are happy, they will be pleased. And if they are happy and pleased, they will give me in return. They will grant me my boons. So this question of appeasing them, pleasing them, doesn't arise. Because for they have no pride. It is because of pride that a man likes to be worshipped. If a man has no pride, he doesn't like to be worshipped. And so you see, she is connecting this question of pride. We said they have a sattvic ego, but they do not have this sense of, in the sattvic ego, they do not get pleased with all this. And in fact, she says, all these prayers and acts of worships and puja, it doesn't worry them. Because they do not get a sense of pride. You see, when we on the human level, when we please somebody, a higher authority on something, because he has the pride of being higher and all that. But most of these higher Godheads, please remember there's a distinction between the higher and the lower. I'm going to come to that. So these higher Godheads, or the gods, are not pleased because they don't have the pride. And if, for instance, they see a good intention or a fine feeling or a movement of unselfishness or enthusiasm, a joy, a spiritual joy, these things have for them an infinitely greater value than prayers and acts of worship and pujas. This is so much sensible. So much of real spirituality now we understand. So to please gods, you don't have to go to the pujas and worship and do this, all this, go into the temples and prayers and do all that stuff. In fact, that is only pleasing yourself. If you really ask yourself frankly and bluntly and unabashedly, going to temple, whom does it satisfy? You. And your community. हाँ मेरा बहू बहुत अच्छी है, मैं बहू goes, मेरी बेटी goes to the temple every Saturday जाती है. It's a kind of a social recognition. And then in the family everyone is happy. You have got an ideal bahu and an ideal daughter because they go every Saturday to this temple. And then it becomes a kind of a auto-suggestion in your mind and say, हाँ मैं जाता हूँ, मैं जाती हूँ temple Monday को, Wednesday को. But be rude with yourself and say, hey, why am I going? To please myself, to please my in-laws, to please my brother, to please... Does it please the God? What pleases him? Mother has put it bluntly. A fine feeling, a good intention, a movement of unselfishness. So a movement of unselfishness, you go and help somebody in the need, somebody whom you can see develop, a child in a school, you go and give him, what we call sponsor a child, so that the child can grow and educate himself and become a man. Something, a fine feeling, if you are really friends with somebody, a little gesture of kindness, understanding, forgiveness, and then you have a kind of a joy, a spiritual joy. You go to meditation, you sit in nature, you look at a flower. You see, we don't think that these are pleasing God. We think only going to the temple and puja and agarbatti and coconut is pleasing Him. No. Sit in the garden and admire a flower, and you have a joy, a spontaneous, look at the sunrise, and you say, wow, what a beauty. You don't have to say even words. See the sunrise and the sunset, the colors and the beauty. It kind of fills you with joy. A distilled joy. No words, no intentions, no desires, no aspirations, no prayers. That is much more pleasing the divine or the God even, now let's say, than this artificial thing that have been told by parampara, by tradition. This is the way you do your puja, this is the way you do your worship. An act of worship is not a puja. An act of worship can be looking at the sunrise, looking at the sun, looking at the flower, looking at a beautiful bird. Stand and look at a butterfly. Why not? All this is God's creation. Sri Aurobindo calls this as Ananda Brahman. The Brahman is there in everything around. Why don't you see the Brahman why do you see the Brahman only in temple? He is Ananda Brahman. He spreads his joy and delight in everything and everywhere in nature and creation. So Mother has come to that very specially. And then she says, I assure you, what I am telling you is very serious. If you seat a real God in a chair and oblige him to remain there all the while you are doing your puja, he may perhaps have a little fun watching you do it, but it certainly gives him no satisfaction. None at all. He does not feel either flattered or happy or glorified by your puja. You must get rid of that idea. There's an entire domain between the spiritual and the material worlds which belongs to vital beings, and it is this domain that is full of all these things, because these beings live upon that, are happy with it, and it immediately gives them importance. And the one who has the greatest number of believers, devotees and worshippers is the happiest and the most puffed up. Can you imagine now? So we get the answer here, that these higher gods, they do not want your worship and puja and pleasing and all that. They perhaps would be happy if you see the divine around you, in nature. But then, as we said when we did the chart also, between the overmind and the mind there are different levels. We'll come to that tomorrow. The levels of intuition and higher mind, etc., etc., where there are different beings. They are no more called gods. Mother calls them for mother. They are different beings. They are these vital gods, or the vital Godheads, or the vital beings, who get the fun, who are pleased with your agarbatti and puja and all that, and who are pleased saying, I got 10 lakh devotees, somebody says I got 15 lakhs devotees, somebody says I got 3 lakh devotees. They are exactly like the human beings, the human gurus who says, I got 10,000 devotees, somebody says I got 50 lakh devotees. The more the number of the devotees, the guru is happy. The more the number of devotees, that vital God is happy. So you see, there is a gradation of the gods also. True gods, higher gods, nothing. The lower gods, or the vital beings, they get the pleasure. In fact, as she says very bluntly, and then they immediately gives them the sense of importance. You see, so many people are coming to me on Fridays and Sundays, giving me that much offering. I'm all clad in gold, I'm clad in diamonds I got. So you see, this is the way we have to approach and see, is this God a kind of a vital being or really there's a divinity? So she says, be careful. In fact, I don't have time to see, but she has herself said that there are many temples where in the place of the Godhead, the Murti, there are vital beings sitting over there. That means these lower gods are the vital beings who sit over the statue or the Murti there, and whoever goes, offers their prayers, they suck their energies. And for these vital beings, the human beings are the food for their survival. Just as you go and have a cup of tea and biscuit for your survival, something solid and material. It's a very strange organization of the world, you see. We being physical, we want physical things to hunger for satisfying our hunger. They being vital, they want vital food. So the vital food are our emotions, are our ambitions, are our impulses, are our desires, are our greeds. All that is vital, they want that food. Like I want all the food in the market, in the bazaars, the food market. So the structure is the same. There are mental godheads, we'll come to that when we come to asuras, who want from the human being the mental food. So this entire entire this creation is so structured that each of us, we get our food from on our own level. So we see, and that is why if we get angry, if we get passionate, if we get desirous, what are we doing? We are feeding these vital people, or vital beings. So we become the food for these beings. And if you eat too much also, what happens? You get a bad stomach. So similarly, if you feed too much, you get a bad battle. Because you are given out. All your energies, you are given it away. So the mother is very careful to say, in fact, the story is, of course, she has narrated about Notre Dame de Paris, cathedral in Paris. This is architecture, is one of the most greatest wonders of the world. So beautiful is architecture. But there, in the central place, she says, I see a big spider, a black spider sitting there. Hundreds of people come, thousands of people come, and it sucks the energies of all those, because the spider has spread its web, she says. The entire cathedral, there's a web is there. So anybody coming there, it sucks there. Anybody coming there, it sucks. Anybody coming there, it sucks. But then you would say, why are people going there for hundreds of years? So there's a magic there. What's that magic? It's the faith. You see, human beings are so well constructed that because I have the faith that this is my God, that faith itself turns in, okay, my vital energies have been sucked by that spider. But because I have the faith that this statue is the Murti, is the Godhead, I get blessings of the Godhead. I get something from this Godhead, because the Godhead is beyond the spider, beyond his vital forces. Because my faith has imagined that I'm looking at Vishnu, that I'm looking at Shiva, I'm looking at Krishna. So it's those figures that really come and communicate or bless me somewhere. Although inwardly I'm being sucked out, outwardly there's somewhere a little connection with the divine. So that is why people keep going to this temple or that place, in spite of the wrong forces that are there. So, what do we do? Best to go to Matra Mandir. No God, no deity, nothing. Where you have to go to a place perhaps where you think only of the divine. Because the moment there's a God Murti, you think of that God. And then the moment you think of Kartikeya, you think of this God or Shiva or Ganesha and all that, you have all the time restricted to your image to Ganesha or to Kartikeya or this God or that God. You yourself become so narrow and then so limited. But if I say, I'm thinking of the divine, the Brahman or whatever, then you see your faith itself becomes so enlarged. You are neither a Christian nor a Hindu nor a Muslim, because you have taken away the forms and the formats that go with the forms. So spirituality is required, where there is no emblem of any particular God, a particular way, but even the gods are so specific. They say, I want to be worshipped with this flower, I want to be worshipped with this chandan, I want to be... They're so particular. They narrow it down. In spirituality, there's nothing like that. In fact, samadhi, you cannot even take flowers there. They have written no flowers in the samadhi. Why, to the extent I told you, when the samadhi was made in 1950 on 9th of August, 9th of December, Mother said, don't put flowers, anything here. But the moment you put flower, then you are again giving it a form. She said, no flowers, no agarbatti. Because people, especially Indians, are so fond of all this. You do bring in a karpur, you bring in a agarbatti, and not only that, we do all the dance of Durga. Bengalis will do all the dancing, some other people will do Sashtanga Namaskar, somebody will do the trance movement. It becomes a tamasha in front of Samadhi. Samadhi said, please stop all this tamasha here. Just sit quiet, do your meditation. No external paraphernalia to demonstrate your devotion. She said, no. Be simple. Try to connect inwardly.
So just one question I have, since you were mentioning about worshipping the formless. Not worshipping, I'm just saying what you said just now. So where is the distortion in this also, like in Islam you see?
Pardon me?
Just now you mentioned, but then where is the distortion? How would you explain the distortion that comes in Islam? Maybe it might be out of context, but I'm asking.
No. Where does the distortion come in?
Yeah. Example in Islam, they don't have.
Oh, Islam. Achha, sorry, I don't get it.
It may be out of context, but just,
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that. Let me go through this. So this way, no, of course, even there also you see the moment they say Islam, they have got a particular, is excluding. Does Islam, Allah include Brahman, include Jesus, include? No. There, Allah is that box Allah. Okay, form is not there, but the concept is a mental form is there. That is there, the frame is there.
Yeah, I got the answer.
Got the answer, right. So here what we see, then the mother says, so there's an entire domain and, but how can anyone, the gods, and speaking of the true gods, even those of our mind, though they are still a bit, so, they seem to have taken on many human defects, but still, despite all that, they really have a higher consciousness. It does not please them at all. An act of true goodness, intelligence, unselfishness, or a subtle understanding, or a very sincere aspiration are for them infinitely higher than a small religious ceremony. Infinitely, there is no comparison. This comes out so strong. It's simple things. Act of goodness, intelligence, unselfishness, or subtle understanding, between people, between nature, between animals. All this question of animal lovers and all that. Now we begin to see the sense in all this environment. Protecting a tree, protecting a plant, protecting a bird, protecting a dog. These are acts of unselfishness. So let's not say, these are all fads. Nothing is a fad. The moment you see a divinity in a form of a dog or a cat or a flower or an environment or a tree or a forest. So in a way you see the modern consciousness is expanding into this impersonal divine. In fact, it is a precursor to spiritual growth, I would say. So when we say get away from religious gods, I think we are already getting away with all these movements of environment, all this question of birds and trees and so we are beginning to appreciate that Ananda Brahman, going away from the temple. And I think we'll end up in a true spirituality where we see the Godhead in everything. So that's the movement that she's speaking about. And then she talks about Kali and all that. From this point of view, I'm just telling about this. From this point of view, it is good that for some time men get out of this religious atmosphere so full of fear and this sort of blind, superstitious submission of which the hostile forces have taken a dreadful advantage. The period of denial, positivism, is from this viewpoint, quite indispensable in order to free men from superstition. It is only when one comes out of that and the abject submission to monstrous vital forces that one can rise to truly spiritual heights and there become the collaborator and true instrument of the forces of truth, the real consciousness, the true power. So that's what we are saying, that this question of going away from religious atmosphere is important because we get away from fear. And then this blindness, this superstition, etc., we have to come out of it. So, from the point of view of evolution, thanks to science, we must thank science that it is cutting off many young minds and young people away from religion, not religion in the sense of the temple religion, because it's at least taking you away from the fear of the gods, from these artificial pujas and functions and worship things which have no meaning, they're all man-made. So there is a phase in evolution where we are getting cut off, thanks to science and technology, and then we'll come back in an evolutionary stage with a wider understanding, the symptoms of which are already coming up in human society, and that's what is positive. Well, that's the thing about gods, and as I promised you, I'll take you. You see, the real passage is here, and of course all that I did in the morning is an explanation of this passage. My first inspiration. And this is from Book 1, Canto 4, The Secret Knowledge. In the wide, signless ether of the self, in the unchanging silence, white and nude, aloof, resplendent like gold dazzling suns, veiled by the ray no mortal eye can bear, the spirits bare and absolute potencies burn in the solitude of the thoughts of God. A rapture and a radiance and a hush, delivered from the approach of wounded hearts, denied to the idea that looks at grief, remote from the force that cries out in its pain. In his inalienable bliss they live. Immaculate in self-knowledge and self-power, calm they repose on the eternal will. Only his law they count and him obey. They have no goal to reach, no aim to serve. Implacable in their timeless purity, all barter or bribe of worship they refuse. Unmoved by cry of revolt and ignorant prayer, they reckon not our virtue and our sin. They bend not to the voices that implore. They hold no traffic with error and its reign. They are guardians of the silence of the truth. They are keepers of the immutable decree. A deep surrender is their source of might. A still identity their way to know. Motionless is their action like a sleep. At peace, regarding the trouble beneath the stars, deathless, watching the works of death and chance, immobile, seeing the millenniums pass, untouched, while the long map of fate unrolls, they look on our struggle with impartial eyes, and yet without them cosmos could not be. Well, I'll take up, I have one more page to go, but we'll take up this section. Now this is the direct description. In the unchanging silence, S capital here, in the unchanging silence, white and nude, aloof, these are the gods, the upper higher gods that we are getting the description of. Aloof, resplendent like gold dazzling suns. You see, he's giving a beautiful description of the resplendent Godheads. Are resplendent like gold dazzling suns, veiled by the ray no mortal eye can bear. Obviously, veiled by the ray, otherwise if these resplendent Godheads, they shine forth, we cannot bear to look at them. So there is a kind of a veil, they pull down their forces, their light, or they temper their light. The spirits bare and absolute potencies burn in the solitude of the thoughts of God. So they are there, all brilliant, but tempered for the human beings. They are the absolute potencies of the divinity. They are there standing. A rapture and a radiance and a hush, delivered from the approach of wounded hearts. You see, delivered in the sense they are away, that they keep themselves away from the wounded hearts of the human beings. They are not touched by them. They go away. denied to the idea that looks at grief. You see, they are not bothered about the grief of the human beings. They reject, they keep aloof, they are away. Removed from the force that cries out in its pain. You see, their nature, we have seen already, remote, aloof, indifferent. They don't respond to the cries of the human beings or anything. In his inalienable bliss they live. So they have a continuous existence in bliss. They don't have contact with suffering of the human beings or with Prakriti or with nature. And they have this bliss in his inalienable bliss. That means with the divine they have a contact that directly under his command. We'll see the line later. They are directly under his command. So they live in a perpetual bliss. Immaculate, 57. Immaculate in self-knowledge and self-power, calm their repose on the eternal will. Here, immaculate in self-knowledge and self-power. Obviously, they are full of power, and they have all knowledge, omniscient knowledge. So try to get an image. Gods who are fulfilled, who are happy, who are in bliss. They have the bliss and knowledge and power. So what more do they want? So they say, let the human beings do what they want at earth, let things happen upon earth. We have nothing to do. And then calm their repose on the eternal will. So they are in the waiting for the Supreme's command. What the Supreme Divine wants. They say, we are here only to do what He has wanted me to do. Not to be disturbed, perturbed, attracted to, responding to human beings. So they say, we are here more as evolutionary forces. So you can imagine their distance from the human beings because they are wanting to be very much in the light of the divine, in the divine's command. Only His law they count and Him obey. Yeah, I was wanting that. Only His law they count and Him obey. So they are not bothered about human beings, about earth needs, nothing. Needs, yes. If the divine says do this, they will go and do. What the mother also had said, remember, they are there to only obey. Don't take initiative. Don't go and help a human being in trouble or there's a volcano somewhere, there's earthquake. Nothing. They say, I'm waiting for the divine will. I'll obey only Him. They have no goal to reach, no aim to serve. Because they don't have an evolutionary process. They don't have to go from one level to a higher level to realize the psychic being. No aim, no goal. They are typal, static, perfect beings. So imagine a level where evolution has come to a stop. Or evolution doesn't happen, it's not the question of come to a stop. And that is another way why we see the importance of earth. Earth is the only place where evolution takes place, where there is progress, where there is a slow unraveling of the divine. So he says, they have no aim, they have no goal, implacable in their timeless purity. So they have this, implacable, and in the perfect, what Aurobindo called that stainless purity, remember in the message. They are absolutely in purity. All barter or bribe of worship they refuse. So our understanding that I must please Him, I may give Him gift and then kind of confuse Him and corrupt Him, you cannot. He said they are absolutely pure. So no bartering, no bribe of worship is accepted. Because in a way it's a kind of a compromise. If you tell the Godhead, I give you 1 ton of 1 crore of rupees, you give me this gift, it's a barter. It's a kind of a compromise between gods and men. So here they say, no, sorry, I don't take, I don't give. No compromise. So they are creatures, they are Godheads, they are gods who are on that level, unperturbed, undisturbed by the earth. Unmoved by cry of revolt and ignorant prayer. See how clearly it says unmoved. There's not an iota of emotional disturbance that though that bechara human being, 10,000 people have died with the tsunami, nothing. Any people die, tsunami comes, pralaya happens, they say no. They reckon not our virtue and our sin. We always argue with the divine saying, I have led a beautiful life, life of purity, I've only, helped humanity, helped society, I've done 30 years of good job where I didn't have one paisa of corruption and all that. And why this bimari, why this cancer, why this problem, why this calamity? We keep arguing as if, my virtues and sin, they have to reject each other. So they say, I don't care for your virtue. You may be the best of sadhaks, best of rishis, best of munis, or you may be the worst of criminals, worst of murderers, nothing. So you see, Sri Aurobindo is bringing out all these contradictions only to show that they are really above. Sorrow, suffering, virtue, sin, aim, goal, nothing. So in a way it's a kind of a frightening image. That here are people who don't respond. And we in our ignorance have been thinking that go to the gods, approach the God, they will respond, you do your prayers and they will give you the answers. This, they reckon not, they hold no traffic with error and its reign. Clear? They hold no traffic means they have no link, they have no connection with this ignorant world full of errors and mischief and all that. It says nothing. We have no traffic. They are guardians of the silence of the truth. They are keepers of the immutable decree. Last word. They are guardians of the silence of the truth, T capital. So that supplemental truth, the way it has designed this universe, what is its progress, at what stage this mind will come, at what stage the supermind will come. So they kind of follow the blueprint made by the supermind. So they are there to execute the orders, the design, the drawings, the blueprint of the supermind. So nothing comes in between. Once they say, no, supermind has said, or the God, the divine has said, they will do it without hesitation. Maybe there are 50,000 people who have to die for that. A world war will be brought out. They will say, world war, I'll bring out 50,000 people killed, but I'll bring in a new stage of human unity. So that kind of, ruthless obedience to the divine, to the truth. So they say, they're keepers of the immutable decree. Now a deep surrender is their source of might, a still identity their way to know, motionless is their action like a sleep. A deep surrender is the source of might. So they don't ask and question the divine. They say, Lord, what you say is our command. They are wonderful soldiers, very obedient soldiers, very ruthless soldiers. But they keep up the rhythm of this world, of this evolution of the world. Motionless is their action like a sleep. At peace, regarding the trouble beneath the stars. You see, at peace, regarding is a French word. Regarder is to see. It's not English regarding or regards. So at peace, regarding, looking at the trouble beneath the stars. Whatever trouble is happening in this universe, on this cosmos, on this earth, they're just looking at it. Deathless, watching the works of death and chance. They themselves are immortal, and they're watching all that is happening on earth, the human beings, the creatures, animals, everything, which are dying, there's perchance happening, accidents happening. They are immortal, watching at the mortals. Immobile, seeing the millenniums pass. They don't move, they don't evolve, they don't get disturbed, but they see thousands of years, this yuga has come, another yuga is coming. They see the movement of the star, they must see the movement of time. Untouched while the long map of fate unrolls, they look on our struggle with impartial eyes, and yet without them, cosmos could not be. This is an interesting sentence here. One is, they look on our struggle with impartial eyes, as we said. They're not disturbed, they're not concerned. They see man dying, people suffering, everything is fine. Because they will respond only to the central command, not to the many, the manifestation, not to the finite. So impartial they see all this, and yet without them cosmos could not be. You see, then we may question what is the need of such gods? If they don't respond to us, they don't do any kind of a helping to humanity. And yet without them the cosmos could not be, because without that level, the layer of the overmind Godheads, this rest of the creation could not be. So the world, the universe, the cosmos cannot come. It's like, you cannot jump the level of overmind. You have to come through. Because what overmind brings to the universe is something different. It may not bring about this direct response to the so-called devotees, to the so-called human beings. But what they bring to the cosmos is completely different, and which is most important as an element. Impervious to desire and doom and hope, their station of inviolable might, moveless upholds the world's enormous task. The wrong sentence. Impervious to desire and doom and hope, the same thing. Untouched, unmoved by doom and hope and desire, their station of inviolable might, they are there, unmoved, nothing touches them, etc. Moveless upholds the world's enormous task. Its ignorance is by their knowledge lit, its yearning lost by that indifference. Now, as the height draws the low ever to climb, as the breaths draw the small to adventure vast, their aloofness drives man to surpass himself. This is an important idea. Their aloofness drives man to surpass himself. So what is the need of these gods? Of course, in the cosmos, structure of the cosmos is important, because they bring in greater powers which they distribute down the line of intuition, etc. But the other thing is, we have Varuna, or we have Agni, or we have this god, that god. The very fact that they are there and we have imagined them, we have realized them, we have contacted them, that we begin to aspire. You see, this is the crucial line. Their aloofness drives man to surpass himself. So it helps us to aspire, to make an effort to become worthy of that Godhead. Because if I say, if you want to realize Varuna or if you want to realize Agni, you have got to purify yourself, you don't have to do the nonsense of the desires, you don't have to do the physical education. So there is the aspiration in human beings to rise to the level of those gods. You see, they may not respond to you, but they are a kind of a living example, a living inspiration. And then human beings, even the very sense of perfection. Somebody says, I want to have beautiful art. Somebody says, I want to have perfect dancer. So this perfection in our daily activities is nothing but trying to go close to that image of perfection that is given in the gods. So in one way, in one word, these gods represent a perfection which is an inspiration to our imperfect world. We try to imitate, go close to that perfection. Even though they may not respond to you, but that is a kind of a module, as we say. A module to imitate, to emulate. So that is one of their functions. Our passion heaves to wed the eternal's calm. Our dwarf search mind to meet the omniscience light. Our helpless hearts to enshrine the omnipotence force. Well, these are the lines that explaining the same aloofness. Our passion heaves to wed the eternal's calm. You see, we have so much of passions and desires and disturbances and all that. But then we say, I'm tired of all these passions and desires. I like to be calm and quiet and peaceful and have this shanti. Because we have in us a sense of that calmness and shanti which belongs to those gods. There's a reflection of that, even on the mental level, even if it is unrealized. We say, Mujhe ush shanti chahiye, us type of shanti. There's a kind of a vague sense of that eternal calm and shanti. And I say, hame bhi peace chahiye. Why are we doing all this meditation stuff? Because I want peace, I want shanti, I want this quietness. And all this is kind of, embodied by these gods. So you see, it's a very, very interesting structure that the divine has given us a kind of a brilliant sample, a brilliant example, a living example, and for human beings to emulate and grow and progress and evolve. So that calmness is there. Same thing, our dwarf search mind to meet the omniscient's light, our helpless hearts to enshrine the omnipotent's force. The same thing on the level of the mind, on the level of emotions. We all want to go to that omniscient knowledge, omnipotence, acquiescing in the wisdom that made hell and the harsh utility of death and tears, acquiescing in the gradual steps of time, careless the seam of the grief that stings the world's heart, careless of the pain that rends its body and life. You see, he has given many images, different ways to show that how these gods are disconnected. They are even careless to the grief that stings the world's heart. I mean, there could be the biggest calamity in the world, there could be an atomic bomb tomorrow. The world gets crashed. They won't bother. So they would say, well, it is there in the plan, in the scheme of this universal, this was supposed to happen, the destruction is supposed to happen. They say, fine. If that is the divine will, what have I got to do? So remember, the beautiful line was always, they say, a deep surrender is the source of might. So they're so completely surrendered to the divine that anything and everything happening in the universe, they say, it's the divine's will. We have no play in that, no role in that. So that kind of an absolute surrender gives them this peace, this omnipotence, this quietness, unperturbedness, unmoved. Because they say, even for example, even the devotees, normally on the level of the devotees also, a great devotee who is surrendered to Krishna or Rama or any god, they say, Bhagavan ki ichha hai. Even when there is suffering and sorrow, they say, Bhagavan ki ichha hai. So we also, when we have the surrender, we say it's Lord's will that I am suffering, it's Lord's will that person is dead, it's Lord's will. Of course, it takes a deep devotion, deep surrender to be able to say that. Complete surrender to the divine is not so easy. Some of us, began to say that, let thy will be done. That's the mother's ultimate prayer. Mother used to practice this, let thy will be done. She never said, I want that. She told the Supreme, let thy will be done. If you want this body to go tomorrow, let it go. So even when she was doing the transformation of her own physical, she would always invoke the divine and say, let thy will be done. I am not attached to this body, tomorrow I must transform, I must succeed in this transformation, nothing. So she was so given up to the divine's will, even her body, if she had to die, it says, let it happen. So that is that absolute surrender. So they are saying that this is the way that these gods, they exist. So, above joy and sorrow is that grandeur's walk. They have no portion in the God that dies, in the good that dies. mute, pure, they share not the evil done. So neither good nor evil they don't share. They have nothing to do with this world. And else might their strength be marred and could not save. You see, if they respond too much and get kind of, boggled by this of good and bad, they may become weak, Sometimes, what happens is, you are maybe in a powerful position, but if you give in to some of your own admirers, relations and all that, your power has been compromised. Because you have given in to the unfair demands, to the unfair desires of some of your own colleagues, or that's what is called corruption in another language, in another way. So that kind of a corruption does not come into these gods because they don't even they don't act or react or connect with you. So their power remains uncorrupted, if I can say, because there is no compromise anywhere. So they are unmarred and alive to the truth that dwells in God's extremes, awake to a motion of all-seeing force, the slow outcome of the long ambiguous years, and the unexpected good from woeful deeds. The immortal sees not, as we vainly see. This is the vision they have. The slow outcome of the long ambiguous years and the unexpected good from woeful deeds. The immortal sees not, as we vainly see. You see, their measure of evolution, their measure of understanding, their measure of our sorrows is quite different. The parameters that they use are pretty different. So ultimately it says, unriven by a brief life's will to act, unharassed by the spur of pity and fear, he makes no haste to untie the cosmic knot, or the world's torn jarring for heart to reconcile. In time he waits for the eternal's hour. So these are the true gods. In time he waits for the eternal's hour. So he is not concerned anything happening in time. In time means in manifestation. He says, let God's will be done, let the divine come down and do what he wants. If and when he requires our help, we will do. Otherwise, I have nothing to do with time as such, the progress, the dangers and all that. So we understand this is the category of the higher gods, but which we have seen, Sri Aurobindo would say, in the first letter that I have noted here, he says, the great gods belong to the overmind plane. In the supermind they are unified as aspects of the divine. In the overmind they appear as separate personalities. So these Godheads, now let us put the whole thing together until what we have done in the chart. That we have seen first, there is the unmanifest Tat, Sat, Aditi, the personal and the impersonal Ishwari and Ishwari, not personal, it's Purusha and Prakriti, Ishwar and Ishwari. And Ishwara, there are four aspects, Ishwari, there are four aspects. And then begins, with this Ishwara and Ishwari, the manifestation. In the manifestation, the first level is that of the supermind, the second level is of the overmind. So we have seen in the supermind also what happens. We will have to deal with greater weight with supermind, but we are interested in the Godheads. So these gods were created and born on the overmental level. But there also again there are levels and levels, the higher gods and the lower gods. And these higher gods, although they have, as it says, separate personalities, like we said, all these four goddesses and so many Indras and Varunas and Agnis. In fact, you would say, even these Vedas, they refer to these gods, the higher gods. But what Sri Aurobindo would refer to is when these higher gods, they go into the supramental level, there they merge their identity, their separateness, they become one with the divine, as aspects. They don't have any names, any qualifications, any characters. They say, I'm a portion of the divine. That's what the mother had talked about in one of her experiences. It's a very interesting conversation. Well, to wrap up, I'll give you a perfect example of how these overmental Godheads, they merge in the divine on the higher level. It says, I'll tell you something. In those days, when I used to give special blessings for the pujas, Durga, Mahasaraswati, etc., at that time Durga and the others used to come to me. Besides, they used to meet me for some time, from time to time. They came by turns, and even now they come for some work or the other. And I do not know if it was last year or year before. Moreover, time has no importance for me. In fact, there is not much difference since I've stopped giving blessings for the pujas. Anyway, it was close to the pujas, and as usual, Durga came to me. She was so beautiful and formidable, like all other children. But it was an entity which possesses the cosmic force. And I told her, shall there be no end to these little entities? And is it not time to turn towards the Supreme, leaving behind the little personal egos? Then you know what happened? Something marvelous and unexpected. In a humble gesture full of gratefulness, she abandoned everything to the Supreme in such a joyous and spontaneous atmosphere which cannot be expressed in words but has to be lived to be seen. And she told me, yes, I am thine completely. What thou willest, I shall do. I give myself to you. Imagine the famous Durga of this entire Eastern India. She surrenders to the mother, because mother says, how long this kind of every year you keep coming and every year you keep going? What's the meaning in all this thing? So she says, Mother, I surrender myself to you. And she prostrated herself at my feet. It was a complete surrender. There was no hesitation. It was so beautiful. It is since then that I have stopped the blessings for the pujas, because it is no longer necessary. It's over, once and for all. Oh, in such a fine act, such a charming gesture. So he says, now Durga has surrendered herself to me, merged herself to me, saying, I don't want any of this, pujas and all that. Durga herself doesn't want. So mother says, now she's part of me. So all the Durga pujas and these pujas and all that is happening in Bengal, Orissa and all that stuff is no more required. Because she has merged herself. It is only to the Lord that we send our adoration and gratitude. The Supreme alone and nothing else. That chapter is over. The reign of the cosmic gods. Now only the Supreme exists for us, nothing else. So you see, she has given the perfect sense of the coming of the spiritual age. So that is how even all these overmental gods, one by one they merge with the divine. They merge with the Supreme Mother. And then they say, don't do the puja to us anymore. So do puja only to the Supreme Mother, only to the Supreme Lord. And then there was another meeting earlier, that was a long time back. It was when I used to visit the playground. One day Durga had come and I asked her a similar question. How long do you want allegiance from the people? Isn't it time we adore the Supreme? He said, Mother, is so much, all these pujas, gods and goddesses, is time over. So she is telling Durga, how long? Then Durga told me gently, I do want to. I am dying. But you see, the people cling to me and do not want to leave me. You see, now Durga Puja continues because he says, people are wanting all that thing, and Bengal is becoming more and more Durga Puja every year. There are hundreds of new murtis and new celebrations and new expenditure. Because it's become, as the mother wrote to me, when I said, what's the meaning of all these pujas? She said, men like festivals. There's no meaning in all these things. All the Durga pujas or Ganesh pujas or this Chaturthi or that Chaturthi. Because she said, men like festivals. Means what? We want to adore, we want to make murtis, we want to celebrate 10 feet Ganesh Ji, 15 feet Ganesh Ji next year. So it's become a competition in Durga. Bengal also has become a terrible competition. Who is going to spend 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs or 50 lakhs? So she says, it's only our liking. We want to celebrate, we want to spend money, we want to have good mishti, we want to have good drishti. So intrinsically there's no meaning. So now she says, you see, when the Durga is saying, they do not want to leave me. They're all like that. Mother is saying, that which goes to aggrandize their egos, that which still wants to follow the past, and the little bit which satisfies them, and they will never abandon even for the Supreme. So you see, it's beautiful. Mother puts it in one word. She says, which goes to aggrandize their egos. All these pandals that we make is nothing but an ego of that community. Vaniya Street or Vaitikupam or this Kupam or that Kupam, they will say, my temple is there, my statue is the ego of the location, nothing more. So she's really hitting you hard on the head, saying that it is man who does not want to change, because he does not want to lose his possessions and his ego. It is man who creates the distinction. You see, truly she wanted to work for me. She is the Durga. You see, truly she wanted to work for me in an act of surrender, but she was completely tied up by the people who adored her and sent their prayers for their personal gains and nothing more. Men do not give it up, and they do not want to lose their support and their ego satisfaction. They cling and obstruct the way. But from this beautiful experience, something emerged. I could get some work done in collaboration with her. It was the New Year prayer which I had written, the prayer that nature will collaborate and so on. You know it? Yes, Mother. It was in this way that slowly she could abandon herself completely, and now we have no need of these pujas. She has become one with the Supreme, and it is the Supreme alone whom we adore. Now she has entered into me, you understand? Mother? Yes, Mother. But there's still the resistance in other countries and in the religious entities which I am trying to transform. But here it is finished. But no one will understand what it means exactly. They will twist and deform it because it is beyond their conceptions. They cannot imagine such an event, that the gods could surrender to me. It is something unimaginable for them. It is all right, my child. For you, I am still the Supreme. When you see that you cannot imagine that the gods could surrender to me. Once in those very early days, Mother would come down to the meditation hall somewhere. Even at midnight, even at 1 o'clock, there's no fixed time. Mother would come from the playground, give dinner to Sri Aurobindo, then do her work, and then come and meet some of the disciples. So they would be sitting, waiting. Some days it's 12 o'clock or 12:30 or 1 o'clock or 11:30. So they didn't know when to come. So some of them would fall asleep. Some would say, Mother, you are coming so late and we have to sleep. So one day the mother said, you are getting impatient. But even the gods have to wait on me to have a look at me, to have my darshan. So even the gods wait upon me just to have a darshan, and you people can't see, can't wait. So that is the relation she had with gods. And some of these clever human beings, because they are falling asleep, they said, all right, Mother, we'll not fall asleep, we'll wait for you. But what's the way to keep awake? So when somebody says, Mother, your legs are so beautiful, We would like to present you with ankle bells. You know that, what you call the ladies wear that? Pile. So they said, we'll present you with pile, you look so beautiful. Poor mother, I think she did not catch the point. She said, yes, give me a pile. She wore that and she went to the meeting, or to that place. And when she came, that pile sound woke this beautiful sadhaks and says, hey, mother is coming, get her. So they got their own point. So they kept awake at least. When the mother used to come with that pile sound, they would keep awake and say, mother, look, we are all waiting for you, keeping all awake. But maybe I'm sure mother would have had a last laugh. But that is the mother, on whom the gods wait, people wait, and people have surrendered. So when she says, turn to the Supreme, so why in the ashram we don't have religions, we don't go to temples, we don't go anywhere? It's not required anymore to do all that, I think. Well, it will take a long time, but I think some people have started doing it. Let's do that. Okay, so tomorrow is the last day, and we will come down to the next level below the gods, and we'll see what to do.